Now, lastly, only a very few concepts are left. Out of them, the first concept is called the ternary operators. So I will just write ternary operator. So you might ask, what is a ternary operator? It is nothing but uh, uh, a, a way to write if-else statement. So you just know how to write if-else, this if and then here else. Simply like this. Suppose I have a value int age is equal to 25. To here, I will just write if age is greater than 18, print allowed, suppose, and then if not, print not allowed. Okay, so this is our normal if else statement. So you might be asking, what is a ternary operator? So ternary operators are used to just cater down the code we write, or to just make sure it's very clean when we write it. It doesn't, it's not like it's not taking too much space. It's like I will just write age greater than 18. If it's true, then print yes, else print no. See, this is the ternary operator. So I will just mention here again this and then this. I will run run the program and see we have the output yes. So ternary operator is a way to write the if else statement, and yes, you will be using it a lot of time because you can just see the difference with your own eyes. That is, it's just a one line of code, and earlier we have to wrote so many code to do the same thing. So it's just written like the condition, then the question mark. That is, if the condition is true, then what we have to do. And with this colon, it means if this condition is not true, then what we have to do. Simple as that. Now, this ternary operator is over. The concept is over. After that, our final and important concept is null safety. Earlier also you have used this null safety. If you remember, it was the question mark in the data type, which means the value can contain null as well. This null safety was introduced very recently. So if you go back 6 months back, or in the end of 2020, you can say you won't be hearing, or you won't be using this null safety because it was not in the production mode. It happened on 3rd March 2021. The concept of null safety was introduced officially. Earlier, when we declare any variable, it can contain value or can be left null by default. This may create errors when we run the app. That is why the concept of null safety was introduced. Now, when we declare any variable, it is assumed that it will not be null unless we declare using certain keyword, which we will discuss later on. Null safety was already activated. See here down, it was already activated here, and in Flutter, it is on by default. So you have no other choice of removing it. So what was introduced in the null safety concept? There were some new keywords or operators. First is this question mark, which we have used before. We use it to denote that a variable can contain a real value or can be null as well. In this case, we already know that the value can be null, and we will handle that accordingly. There will be no scope for any unknown exception error in runtime, because earlier it was like there was a variable, suppose string, which will contain a user ID, and if that is null, then it will be a lot of trouble because we won't be able to fetch any information from our database without the user ID. So let's write it down. Let's write, if this string friend is equal to Elon Musk. Okay, then it's not showing any error. But what will happen if we write, if string is equal friend is equal to null? Now this will show an error because we cannot assign a null value to a type of string. But if we know that this value may be null, then we have to use this operator. Now there isn't any issue. Either this friend variable will be null, or this friend variable will contain a string like this. So this is the use of the question mark keyword. So let's do it. Let's do some more thing. Suppose we have a function set friend. It will contain a name, and it will accept a name, and we will just write name dot to uppercase, and we will call this function here. Just write Bill Gates. Let's run. I just made it wrong. Now let's run. Obviously, that function was written below, so that's why it was showing an error. Now, what will happen if we try to send a null value? In this case, now it will show an error because null cannot be sent to a string. But if we make it null safety, then this error will be gone, but the error will be here because if it's null, then how this function will be executed? Because we are saying that the name variable will be null, but again there will be error as we have some kind of function. To tackle that, we have to check here if name is equal to null, then here only I will return the function and not execute below. So now this is a proper way of checking if the value is null or not. So this concept is very important. And there is another keyword to check if a value is null or not, which is this keyword question mark and dot, which will we use. Now let's see null. So it's checking whether this name is null or not. If it's null, then just print out null. Or if it's a name that is Bill Gates, then what will happen? It will execute the function. So this is a better way to just check the null what you say, if any variable is null or not. After that, the next keyword is required. This is a change which is being done in the code. If you remember how what were named arguments, it were just like this and just a string name and print here name. It will show an error because the name can be can be null. So either we have to use this question mark to solve this, or we simply write required keyword here. Required, yes, this keyword, which simply means we have to send a value. We cannot just send null to this function. So that is the use of required keyword, mostly in the times where the values can be optional, that is in name parameter. Or if you don't want to write required, then the other thing is just to give a default value, that is suppose guest, like this, and it will be equal. So this is a default value if the string name is containing null. I will just go and test my name and send null here. Sorry, it should be at least string. If I'm not sending anything, then it will be name, because I'm not saying it will be null, but we can just make it optional. And if I write Elon Musk, then what will happen? Since it's a name argument, it should be like this. See, while we are programming, we have to just make sure we don't do all these kind of mistakes. You have to remember the difference between a name parameter, and a positional parameter. So I hope you have understood a little bit about null safety thing, because this concept is very much important. After that, the next keyword, which is this exclamation, to tell the compiler that we are very sure that the value will not be null. We are confident that variable will always hold a value, then only we will use this keyword. Let's try it of our own. Now, let's suppose we have this string new name variable which can be null. We have right here. And what will happen if I send this string to the myname function, which also accept a name parameter, which is a string. If I just write new name here, you will just see it will show an error because we are sending a string, that is a nullable string, to a string. But what will happen if we just give an exclamation here, which means we are very sure that this is having a value. So to make sure we have something, we are very much sure that the value will not be null in the future also, we use this exclamation. But remember, this exclamation is a very tricky thing, because if we are wrong with our thing, with if that means if we are saying that the value will not be null, and if the value is null, then we will have this kind of errors in our application, which is not good. So you might be thinking that it's too much to digest, but just have some patience, because definitely when we are in the Flutter course, we will understand all these concepts very clearly. So we have understood keywords like question mark, exclamation, then required keyword. Now the last change is the late keyword. It's very simple. This keyword is used when we are sure that we will initialize the value of the variable later on, which means no matter what, when the object of the class is being created, we will initialize, or we will make sure that variable is not null. So just remember, if you later forget to assign the value to a late string or a variable, it will show error. So if you have a class of student, we can just write late int id like this, late int sorry, string name. And this means this id will be printed, sorry, will not be left null no matter what. So if we have print id function, just write print id, so then it's fine, it will not show any error. But if we remove the late button, see, then it will then there is an error, because it's showing that first please have a value here like 2 3 like this. But using the late keyword, we can remove this error and just say to the compiler that don't take this much stress, we know that this variable is important, and we will make sure it has a value at the end of the object creation. So that's it. These were the concept of null safety, and this was the final topic of the Dart course as well. If I feel like if I have to add anything in future, I will definitely add it. But right now we are good to go directly into the Flutter course. Thank you.